Hello and welcome to a new episode of Deprogrammed. I am your host, Keri Smith, and I'm very excited. We have an interview for you today with Dr. Ronen Shoval, who's an Israeli philosopher. He's the dean of the Argaman Institute for Advanced Studies. He has a new book out called Holiness and Society, a socio-political exploration of the Mosaic tradition, which focuses on examining holiness as a unique political category. I'm very interested in asking him about that. Until very recently, he was also an associate research scholar and lecturer in politics at Princeton University until a cancellation forced him out. So he's here to speak with us today about that. Please welcome Dr. Shoval. Hello, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I know it's a quite a time difference, and I appreciate you working with me on finding a time that works because you are in Israel today, where it looks sunny.
Yeah, it's sunny here in Jerusalem. Yeah.
Very nice. I've been reading about you, and I want to ask you about your book because it sounds very interesting. But first, the thing that caught my attention, my friend who introduced us told me you should talk to this professor. He was one of these professors who's been canceled at Princeton University, and I was wondering if we could start there, and you could tell me just a little bit about what happened to you in the past couple of years there.
So actually, I had a very good time at Princeton at the beginning. I was part of the James Madison program, where I was basically wrote this book, and had the opportunity to teach. I taught a seminar on the meaning of life in different cultures. It was very good, nice seminar. And one day I was invited to Hillel, which is the Jewish Center in the university, to speak about Israel, internal problems in Israel, basically the legal reform that was discussed in terms of Israel. And when I was supposed to arrive to the university, I'm getting a phone call from the organizing saying, hey, there are like zillions of people here with huge demonstration against you, and I was surprised. I had to basically park behind the building where two policemen had to escort me to the class from behind. I was trying to give my lecture, but the demonstration where they just did everything in their power in order to destroy the lecture, and they had drums and they screamed, and some of them were able to enter the building and make some noise, and the atmosphere was quite hostile. And after a couple of minutes, I had to completely change my lecture because it was impossible to have it. And then we had some discussion, or I was trying to make it as Q&A, but it was pointless. And
Were these mostly student protesters?
No, I'm not sure. Some of them were from the community. Some of them came from far away, from New York. It was organized. I know they came with a bus. Some of them were students. But then when I was starting to understand what happened, I saw that a couple of professors from the university were writing essays against me in some context. And those essays were the one who started this turmoil, and then they were trying to cancel my course. It was published they wrote a couple of articles against me, and I was in the middle of witch hunt, which was quite surprising because I wasn't, sometimes somebody's, if you're looking at Ben Shapiro, when he's going to universities, he's trying to be controversial. He's trying to talk about topics which are toxic, and so sometimes it makes sense that you have some kinds of discussion about it, because it's that's the point, to have a conversation, a political conversation. But in my case, it wasn't connected at all to any political issue.
What was the lecture about? The lecture that they protested?
The judicial reform in Israel. It's it's nothing to do with I don't know, gun control um, 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 or Israel versus Palestine, or it was internal issue of Israelis. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and in a way, we have in Israel a legal system which is very have some similar problems to what you have in America, when the system sometimes is behaving in a not a just way, and I would say prosecute people for their political ideas, like what we had with President Trump, and we have a huge discussion in Israel. We used to have a huge discussion in Israel regarding the how it what's the right way to make those changes. So I was trying to emphasize the philosophical background of this discussion and showing the philosophical assumptions of those two perspectives on the topic, and going from Rawls to Plato and discussing those kinds of ideas in the context of the Israeli case, because I'm from here and I know it quite well. Listen, Keri, it wasn't about me, and it wasn't about the topic of my lecture. It was because what I represent, what conservative represent, and the lack of tolerance that we have inside universities right now. University is supposed to be a place where we can talk about ideas in a manner way and look for the truth and have discussions. And the atmosphere right now doesn't allow it. And I was just one victim, but it wasn't against me. It was against what I represent, which is being a conservative, pro-Judeo-Christian tradition professor.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of their specific accusations. They labeled you, these two professors. They wrote a letter, as you mentioned, or an essay in the Princetonian in April of 2023, where they accused you of being the founder of a group that you ended up leaving in 2013, but a group that they described as Israeli nationalist and fascistic in nature. What would you say about those? I couldn't find any specific. I went in and I it was hard for me to find specific evidence or examples of quotes of yours that they took issue with, and so I just wanted to give you the floor and a chance to address those accusations.
I think it's sometimes also in America, but definitely in Israel. When somebody is accusing the other guy of being a fascist, that means that he lost the debate. When you don't have a good argument, the easiest way is to go to slander you. Okay? So, I created after Second Lebanon War, we had at that time I used to be a student in Hebrew University, and we had a very big anti-Israeli, I would say, campaign inside universities, which might sound weird, but the Israeli universities are not promoting Israel, and I was trying to organize students to be pro-Israel inside the university. So being pro-Israel might perceived as, from their perspective, as being fascist. So, but
When you said that the universities that some of the universities in Israel are not pro-Israel, can you describe that a little more? I think that what you might be describing is similar to what some of our audience might recognize with American universities, where there's a significant push, I think, to generate in young people this sort of resentment towards or hatred for our country.
So in the dorms of Beersheba University, one of the universities, the biggest university we have in the south, the university didn't allow the students to put Israel flag in their room. Okay.
They would not allow an Israel flag.
No.
In Israel.
Yeah. Okay. So, is it a good example?
That's a good example. Yes. Was there a rainbow flag there?
At that time, no. At that time, no. But that's the atmosphere, and students feel uncomfortable with that. Other example would be what happening inside the lecture rooms. You're being bombed by we call the Israeli universities sometimes 50 shades of red, okay, which means you have 50 types of communism in university, and you're trying to say, listen, there are other perspectives, and it's that's the reason that I'm at the head of Argaman Institute, because it's almost impossible right now in Israeli universities to learn seriously Hayek or Edmund Burke or the founding father of America or many other great philosophers and traditions which have been neglected in the traditional curriculum inside Israeli universities, and we are trying to share our students with these important traditions and learn from them, because if we won't have at least half of the Western civilization tradition in the classroom, where would we have it? Okay, so our goal is to expand the discussion and show that there are. I'll just give you one example. Okay, it's even hard to find Adam Smith in Hebrew. Okay, no, you can't read Theory of Moral Sentiment in Hebrew. Of the Wealth of Nation, less than a third of it was translated to Hebrew. It's not by accident. Of course, all Karl Marx books are in Hebrew. Okay,
Wow.
So we are trying. That was I was trying to do in Imtirtzu. Basically, at the beginning, there was to make advocacy for Israel in Israel, because listen, I want to share with you an important point. Mm-hmm. Israel is a tiny, tiny state in a very, very bad neighborhood. And, you are, people of America can make mistake, and you are not going to pay you're not going to pay a real price on that, because you have huge margin of error. We don't have margin of error. Our margin of error are tiny, tiny, tiny. So if you would adopt those radical agendas only for one generation in Israel, we would be eliminated, and we almost saw it in October 7th. And so I was trying, when it was not cool anymore to go to serve in the IDF, we saw it as a national problem. Okay, so those professors who are, we were supporting soldiers. Okay, they are accusing us on stuff because we were pro-Israel, pro-IDF, pro-Western civilization, and the best way to win an argument is not to deal with the basic assumption of the not having a dialogue, basically, just slender you, and that will happen. And unfortunately, that's what happened in America as well. But the price in Israel of doing it is just huge, because if we will lose, it's not about rainbow flag. It's about elimination of the people. Mm-hmm. So we don't have the luxury of making those experiments.
To be clear, I think I know kind of what you're talking about, an elimination of the people. It's not just about a rainbow flag, but for anyone who's confused hearing that, can you explain a little more? Is there an ideology or a different system of belief that is threatening the state of Israel that you see moving in through universities?
Well, the concept here is whether it's just to use force or not, okay, to defend yourself, and to be able to identify good versus bad. And what postmodern civilization and woke brought us is losing our ability to identify who's good and who's bad. Okay?
Yes.
And well, you have in the border people from Mexico. We have in the border ISIS and Al Qaeda and Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay, mm-hmm. So if we are not able to identify them as as they are, as what they say they are. They want to kill us and murder us, and this is what they are doing in any opportunity that they have. And if we won't be able to bring our people to serve in the IDF and defend ourselves, we just won't be. They will eliminate us. Okay, this is what happened in October 7. For a few hours, we weren't defending ourselves, and we saw the outcome. Okay, uh, that's it's the invasion of people on Mexico might be, or South America might have some very, very bad long-term implication on many people's life, but it's not as concrete as what we see here. People, the crazy fundamental Islam groups that are attacking us, they are not trying to have a life with coexist with us. They're trying to murder us, and they say it out loud, and they behave like this. So we have to be able to identify good from bad. And I'm not talking about philosophical discussion of good or bad. I'm talking about, is this guy actually is going to murder me, murder my wife, rape our kids, or not? That's a serious problem. So when the postmodern woke neo-Marxist perspective is coming to Israelis and the next generation, they have to have the tools to say, hey guys, and that might be nice in the classroom, but this is not how reality works, and we have to make sure that we protect ourselves from those ideas, because ideas shape reality. And when you have such a small margin of error, the outcome of those ideas might be catastrophic.
Were you surprised after October 7th to see some of how the reaction evolved in the United States in particular? Were you surprised? Because October 7th was, from my perspective at the time, you've got this horrific event of terrorism where people are being kidnapped, raped, murdered. The goals at inflicting terror are explicitly stated, and everyone seemed to come together, at least here in the States, for a very short time after that day of horror. And then slowly over time, it evolved into uh, this attitude of, I was seeing this on both the left and some people who claim to be on the right, that it was an act of resistance. That the things that happened on October 7th were opposition to colonialism. And were you surprised about any of the reaction that evolved after that date? Does that make sense?
Unfortunately, I wasn't surprised. Okay, um, I wasn't surprised um, because of our history, and we learned history and we know what happened in the past. And generation after generation, there are attempts to justify anti-Semitism. It can be from the right, it can be from the left, it can be from other perspectives. Um, I was not surprised, and I think I was not surprised because I was aware, but my generation was surprised.
Yes.
Okay, my generation felt that anti-Semitism is a problem of the past, and well, we had the Nazi Germany, and that's it. But that's not truth. And suddenly, okay, so we understood there is anti-Semitism in the Muslim world. Okay, but our friends from in America and in the Western civilization, in the OECD countries, they understand it. And some of our colleagues and my generation felt a stab in the back. Um, I, I I was, I'm the feeling is that the, um, the people in America, most of them understand what we are facing, and all those radical people who are just using false arguments that they know they're false are at the end of the day, just anti-Semitism, and we can't justify it. It's just a huge problem which the West have to overcome. But to be honest, I wasn't surprised.
Do you think that sentiment is growing? It seems to me, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong about this. It seems to me that it is, um, for many years in America anyway, that the woke left would say that we are living in this white supremacist, patriarchy, and that racism is rampant and anti-Semitism is rampant and sexism is rampant, and that they were kind of creating this boogeyman that was very marginal if it existed at all in the modern day. But to me, it seems since October 7th that marginal boogeyman is now in growing, at least online. And I'm trying to get a sense of how large that sentiment is, that anti-Semitic, that racist sentiment. Do you think that it's actually pulling
Uh,
people?
okay, so I think that what happened is, as we started our conversation, when people are losing their ability to distinguish between right and wrong and good and bad, and what happened is the way that the woke ideology is based on, which is looking for the trying to say that if someone is stronger, it means that he's wrong.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the kind of connection. It means that he's evil, because if he's strong, it only because he uses power in order to get offensive and so on. And so it's always oppress and oppressor, right? And and since Israel is being perceived as the stronger side in this conflict, obviously we are the bad guys. Okay, that's the ridiculous perspective. And therefore, instead of talking about the real problem, they are trying to create a phony problems like Islamophobia week. Okay,
Mhm.
and you can actually imagine that there is like a pyramid where if you are white man, you are the worst, and if you are black woman, transgender, um, um,
Fat.
Muslim, you're getting the most fact, you're getting the most point of being, and it's actually in a way it's putting humanity into boxes. Which, if we think about it seriously, this is exactly what uh, Nazi Germany used to do. Okay, or in different way the communists used to do. They said, okay, if you are part of this box, it means X, instead of treating individuals as individuals. Okay,
Mhm.
um, and so I think there are racist assumptions inside this way that they are looking at the world and behaving in the world itself, and this is why it's very dangerous. Now, and this is what happened in the left, so I'm not surprised that the extreme left, and we heard those voices inside the Democratic Party and inside universities, and it became bigger and bigger, because when you don't deal with evil, it grows. Okay, and if you remember the hearing in the Senate, in the Congress, was exactly the same. You heard about the bringing the president of Harvard to speak in the Senate, and
Mhm.
she can condemn anti-Semitism. And it's really interesting, because if you think about free speech, there are some of the um, ranking of free speech universities, and I think Harvard is the last one in America.
The last, yes.
So I'm just trying to show that it's connected. Okay, when
Yeah.
you don't have when you have no ability to have a free discussion, at the end of the day, you can't even condemn anti-Semitism, blatant anti-Semitism. Okay. Um, so this is regarding the left. So I see this phenomena as growing and growing and growing, and I hope, I sincerely hope that a major change inside university will occur, which um, I hear some of the people in the new administration and Trump administration speaking about making some important changes, such as implementing the Chicago principles of free speech in universities, and so on. And I think that it's really important to make sure that, for example, most of the anti-Semitism inside universities is being promoted with Arab money from the Middle East that funds those centers in the universities, and we need, I think that in order to protect ourselves, we have to make sure that this ends. And you have huge department where you can't even find one conservative. And the real diversity that we need to have inside universities is not diversity of colors and not diversities of genders. It's diversity of ideas. And I think it's almost a time for affirmative action, but for ideas. Okay.
Yes.
Um,
You have a recent column. You have a Substack that people can check out, and you have a recent column about rethinking the American university, rethinking the Ivy League. Sorry. Can you share some of your thoughts on what's broken about the university system and what might help it to become a place of free thought, of affirmative action for ideas?
I think you just said it. We need to have, listen, if you don't have, if we're trying to understand first we need to ask ourselves what is the role in universities. Okay, so long time ago, the universities in Europe started as places of mainly of belief. Okay, it was used to be a religious institutions, and during time we changed those institutions to be a place where we are seeking the truth. What happened in the last generation with the woke movement is it again became a places of belief. And instead of indoctrination the next generation to the right ideas, I don't think this is the role of universities. They don't need to tell the students what to think. They need to have a discussion and help them to figure out their way. But in order to figure out, what you believe in, you need to show two sides of the story. You can't frame someone as evil, fascist, bigot, whatever, if he believes in something, and the other guy as it's much more complicated than that. And I think that universities have to be much more tolerant, and in a way they have to be in a process of let me tell you another concept here. We learned from Darwin that only the one that can adapt to changes can survive. And I think that we are in a moment of time that universities have to adapt to changes. They have to come back to their original belief system, which is seeking the truth and having an open discussion about ideas, and being a place where basically every idea is okay to listen to and to discuss, because this is, sometimes I make mistakes, sometimes you make mistakes, and we have to learn from each other. And if it's an echo chamber of just one type of ideas, you can't find the truth.
Sorry about that. My light just decided to light up on me.
Well, yeah, say something.
Well, let me ask you a question then, because I'm thinking of what the devil's advocate would ask. If the purpose of university is that it's a marketplace of ideas and a search for the truth, and that you consider yourself someone who supports free speech, should we not also allow speech that is considered to be racist or anti-Semitic? Or what is your opinion on that? I know that there are some people who are now saying that we need to have bans on speech, anti-Semitic speech at universities. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'm for free speech. I think that the limits of free speech are very limited in classrooms. However, we need to make a clear distinguish between what's being done inside the classroom when you're trying to seek for a truth, and when it's moving. And I think this is one of the major problems of universities, that they are trying to make a linkage between direct linkage between ideas that you learned in classroom into a political movement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the role of universities. Students are not supposed to create tents and make marches and be violent in the demonstration. It's you're supposed to have an environment which allows you to to engage in a free spirit discussion, and this discussion sometimes might be offended. Okay, sometimes be offended, sometimes be not comfortable, but we have to create an environment which you can actually ask those questions and deal with the ideas themselves. It's not an activist place; it's
Yes.
intellectual place. It's a different kind of activity.
Yes, they're turning students, I would say universities for the past 20 years or longer have been turning students into activists instead of into thinkers. That
I
happened to
think
me, by the way. I don't you probably don't know my history, but I went to Duke University in the late 1990s, and it was the woke ideology was rampant even then. And I left university a staunch activist. And my goal at the time was remaking the world, reshaping the world, and this orthodoxy of thought, of social justice, of these leftist ideas. And it took me a very long time to unlearn all of that.
I think what with the problem in America is it's not only what the students are doing. Sorry, it's the administration.
Mhm.
DEI has become the orthodoxy of the way that universities are functioning. And when you hire people based on their not based on their excellency, not based on their abilities, but based on you know different kind of arguments, that becoming a real problem. And then when you start to say, okay, we would like to raise our history. I remember when I was in the university, where there was a discussion about Witherspoon, the president of the university, which had a statue in the university. I think there's still a statue of him, but they were talking about destroying his statue because he wasn't PC on the terms of 2023. Okay, and this is just ridiculous. Okay, and the fact that they changed the name of the Wilson Building, the president of the university and the president of the United States, those are we can't we have to defend our heritage and deal with our heritage not by erasing it, but by talking about it. Okay, and this is exactly what happened inside. This is what I'm talking about, free speech. Okay, am I supposed to say that everything that happened 200 years ago is exactly in the same standard that we have right now? No, let's discuss it. It's okay. But you can't erase history and thinking that the way to grow is by deleting what happened in the past. No, we have to grow from the past, not to abolish it. Okay, and I think this is part of the problem that universities themselves, the administration themselves are they lost respect for the past, and without respect to our past, we can grow up to the future. Okay, we become an amoeba, become an animal with no history, and we are the historical entities. Okay, and and that's why I think it's a problem. I'll tell you what amazed me when I came first time to the library in Princeton. Um, if you go into the men's bathroom, you can get a free tampon. Okay,
A tampon.
yeah, I was like, okay,
I,
and I had a discussion with one of my students, and I'm quoting. Basically, she said, only when men started to use tampon, they became free. Okay, so okay,
what?
but that's the discussion. Okay,
Yeah.
so and again, I remember I taught Aristotle his book on politics, which is one of the fundamental books in history, in political thought, one of the most important books ever, and he's talking about slaves. So, what's the conclusion, that we are not supposed to learn Aristotle anymore?
Hmm.
No, we have to understand that he wrote it in a context, different context. Does it mean that we have to say that everything that Aristotle said is we have to accept it? No, we can say he made a mistake here and we think differently in those topics. That's okay. But we can't cancel Aristotle. We can't cancel Witherspoon. We can't cancel Wilson. This is not the way that um, we have to learn from the past. Not that's the basic way that we grow. We learn from experience.
At some point in the future, once we've put to bed this idea that men have a reason to use tampons, maybe people will be looking back and saying, "Oh, we must cancel this person because they lived in a time when they said men men use tampons."
Probably, probably.
Probably it'll come full circle.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to switch gears here. I know you have limited time, and I appreciate you spending time with us today. I want to switch gears here and ask you about your book because you have the new book out called "Holiness and Society: A Socio-Political Exploration of the Mosaic Tradition." And I was reading some information about the book, and one of the things that stuck out to me is that you said it's a focus on examining holiness as a political category. What do you mean by that?
Well, thank you for asking this question. I think that I'm trying to defend the Jewish Christian tradition, okay,
Okay.
and or being part of it. So this is how I see it. And when I'm writing from this tradition, one has to ask himself, okay, what's the core of this tradition? And you're going back to the Bible, and I went to the first 5 books of the Bible, and was trying to look for the internal logic of Moses when he expressed his ideas through God, but he expressed his ideas regarding politics, and it always connected to holiness. The basic question that Moses is trying to describe, it's you think about holiness not as something which belongs only to individual. It's not about the holy individual and holy life of the individual. You're thinking, how can I use holiness in order to create a society which will inspire everyone to behave in a certain way? So holiness is basically should be the maybe the map for politician, okay? Which means how can we be good? How we can create a society which asks itself, how can we be the best version of ourselves? Okay, how can we, for example, how can we when a society asks, oh, how can we deal with the poor? Okay, for example. So it's a question which is related to holiness because we want to create a holy society. Moses want to create a holy society, which people will feel so much related to each other that they will solve the problem of poverty. Okay, so this is the part of where holiness is not just something of the individual; it should be the light which path the way to a city on the hill.
Okay.
Was
Are
it
you are
too vague?
you is this something that you're viewing as of outside of the law as sort of culturally and as a society we need to rediscover the concept of being holy, or is this something that you think is that laws should do they naturally reflect holiness as if we as a people aspire to holiness? Can you
Yeah, of
expound on
course.
that?
Well, it's a very interesting question. The relationship between holiness and law. Um, so basically, what I'm trying to say is, okay, we want to create city on a hill, right? That's the So what does it mean? So we create a law. So the law has two. There are two types of laws, if we think about it. Some laws we all agree on a topic. This topic become a law. We agree on something, it become a law. Okay, and there are other types of laws which aim to educate us. Okay, that we're supposed to do something because this is the law. So in order to really create a city on a hill, all the laws should be from the first type of laws that we agree on them. They're not supposed to educate us. They're supposed to um, um, put words to things that we already feel as obvious. And we should listen to the law and do what the law says because we see it in ourselves. Let me give you a radical example. Okay.
Okay.
So if we think, for example, I don't know, pedophilia. Okay. Of course, we think it's not moral, right? So we can write a law about it, but are we listening to the law or to our internal understanding of the wrong of this concept? Of course, we listen to ourselves. The law just explain what we already know. Okay, this would be a good law. But if I would try with the law to educate people what they can and cannot do, that becomes not the good type of laws by perspective of Moses.
An example of that second type of law, might that be something like in Canada, where it's now in some contexts illegal to quote unquote misgender someone, which means
Yeah,
to refer to them by
of
their
course,
actual biological sex.
exactly. Exactly because now I'm trying to use the power of law in order to make you afraid. I can put you in jail if you won't listen to me. I will harm you. The law is not about, and I think laws, a good law is not about education. And even if I would agree, let's assume I would agree with the Canadian law. Okay, of course I disagree with it, but let's assume this is not a good law. Good law shouldn't force people to to behave because they are afraid. This is actually a very important concept of holiness. Holiness is actually when I listen to the society and I listen to the law, not because I'm afraid of something, but because I find it in myself.
Mhm.
Okay. So think about, let's go to much more banal example. You're driving your car and you're stopping on a red light. Why do you do it? It's because you are afraid of the policeman or because you want to be a good citizen and listen to the law. Okay. And you understand that if no one will listen to the red light, we will have, we actually won't have a freedom of movement because we will have anarchy. We have to agree on something, and we have agreed as a society that we are not driving on red light and we're driving on in green light. So when we are listening to the to the red light and we are not driving, we're not listening to the we're not doing it because we are afraid of the government. We're not doing it because we are afraid of the laws. It's because we find the logic of the laws and we want to listen to them because we understand this is the way to build a better society without or with less car accident, society which can actually have a freedom of movement, because otherwise we'll have anarchy. Okay, so I think it's in every level of laws. It doesn't have to go to the extreme. And Moses would tell us that those kind of laws are the laws, the good laws are the laws that we are, or holiness is when we listen to the laws from the right reasons. And he's trying to describe the society, which kind of laws should be in the society, which everybody should listen to because they want to listen to, not because they are afraid of the authority. And this society would actually fulfill a city on a hill.
Let me ask you what might be a controversial question. So it sounds to me like what you're talking about is how one might think that God's law is written on the human heart. So things that that we recognize collectively as being bad or immoral, that we've decided to write into law, like murder is wrong or pedophilia is wrong, that these things are written on our heart and we know them to be true. And my question is, what happens when a society gets so far away from God that we start to argue over some of these things that we used to agree on? And one example might be the very controversial subject of abortion, for example. There are some people who believe this is something that is written on the heart of man, that to kill a human being, whether it's in the womb or outside the womb, is an obvious immorality and therefore should be put into words, that we should but we're at a place, at least in America, where we do not agree any longer that this is something that's immoral. And so when some states try to enact laws, so like here in Texas, we have our own abortion laws now that Roe v. Wade was overturned. Different states are enacting their own laws on abortion. Would you put that kind of a law in the first category or the second category? Is it trying to educate people about what's right and wrong or not? And how do you decide?
I think it's a very, as you mentioned, it's a tough question.
Yeah.
I can share what's happening in Israel, which might be interesting.
Okay.
I have 5 daughters. Okay. Most of Israelis have more than 3 kids. I think we have the average here is 3.4, which is the highest in the developed world. And the way that we see it here in our culture is if a woman have to do a miscarriage, everyone would feel, I think most of the people would feel it's a catastrophe. Nobody would celebrate it. Okay. Sometimes it happens, but it's I would say that when women have this kind of thing, people would treat her as she lost a baby. Okay, it's a catastrophe, it's a disaster. The heart will, everyone would be, oh my God, what happened, and how can we help? And it's nobody would celebrate it. Okay, so we have created in Israel, nobody designed it, but this is how it is. Abortion are legal here. Okay, but it almost never used because the society power, people feel they want to have the baby. Okay, so it's people would be we don't have this discussion in Israel. It's really interesting. It's not a debate between conservatives and liberals and progressives in Israel, because even the progressive in Israel want to have kids. Okay, so the biggest debate that we used to have in Israel was that gay couple wanted to have families as well and wanted to adopt kids. So the question was whether they can have kids or not, because their main argument was that we are also family, we want to create our own families. Okay, so the debate is how can one have a family? Okay, so if suddenly you have an abortion, it would be tragedy. So I would say that the way to heal America in this topic would be to take it away from the legal question and be able to create an atmosphere which, if you have an abortion, that's a tragedy and a reason to be very, very, very sad. Okay, and I hope I gave you some kind of a different perspective.
Yes. I have more questions, but no, I'm something to think about for a while, because I think maybe what you're saying, it's making me think of how, at least in America, there's been a phrase that many of us have repeated for the past few years, which is that politics is downstream from culture, or law is downstream from culture and what a culture holds dear. And so
I agree.
that's certainly where I'm at on the abortion issue, is that I think it's to if you're of the opinion that a country or a culture or people has gotten far from the law of God, that it's upon you to change the culture and bring the culture and the people back to God, because the laws will follow from that, if that makes sense, rather than saying, let's amass all this political power and write a law that nobody wants to follow because the culture is not there anyway.
Yeah, and I
Right?
want to,
Maybe?
yeah, and in the listen, that's my feeling, is that my understanding of the situation, that the Americans are debating, as you said, the layer of laws.
Mhm.
You have progressive and conservatives, but as you said, laws are outcome of ideas, and who shape those ideas? I think the way that most of the American understand the ideas, at least the basic intuition towards ideas was manifested in Margaret Atwood book and later on series Handmaid's Tale. So in the Handmaid's Tale, this is how people imagine, this would happen. This is how we think about reality. This is how culture, this is how religion is being perceived. Okay, where is the other side of the Handmaid's Tale being told? Okay, you can't find it. We are losing the battle of culture, and the outcome is loss. But let's have our forces in the way that we tell stories, and the way that we make movies, and the way that we share our vision. And until the conservatives will be able to actually articulate their ideas in the same beautiful way, artistic way that Margaret Atwood and the Handmaid's Tale was made, the people who are against abortion will lose again and again and again. Okay, that's my perspective on the situation.
Yes.
The debate is being done not on the Congress; it's being done on HBO and on Netflix. Okay.
Yes.
Where is the conservative Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the question.
Well, thank you.
And I think we have a crowd for that. You see, that's the interesting thing. We can actually, it might be a very good business model. So I don't understand why it's not.
We do have a crowd for that. Have you followed at all some of the cultural successes with the Daily Wire, for example? I know they've been trying to do change culture through entertainment, and Matt Walsh's documentary "Am I Racist?" comes to mind, which was,
of course, but "Am I Racist?" is the commentary. What we need is different type of it's a different layers of the commentary. We are starting to be present there, but there isn't you can't have any, at least I don't have, and maybe I'm missing an important TV series or that
yes,
is challenging the way that most people watch it. Okay, Am I Racist? What is a Woman? Great stories. I thank him a lot for doing these initiatives, but I think it's the question of the big the industry itself. Okay, the industry itself need to be challenged. And I think, by the way, it used to be like this. I think if you look at the great movies of the past and the great stories of the past, they weren't progressive. Okay, you had the good, bad, and the ugly. Okay, you had good and bad. Right, the name of this the famous movie of Clint Eastwood. Okay, Clint Eastwood, for example. Okay, we used to have those heroes, and where are they in our generation?
Yeah,
I think that the last movie that I saw, which actually moved me in this direction, was The American Sniper. Okay, that Clint Eastwood. I think it was I can't remember. But The American Sniper was the last movie that actually was able to articulate different kind of ideas. But normally today, when you open any network, you see woke ideology. I just saw on Netflix a series about Alexander Macedon, the great leader of Macedonia, of the Greek. It started with after 2 minutes you see that he's gay.
Yeah. We need you just made me think, do you remember the series Big Love on HBO, which popularized polyamory and Mormonism, and it was sort of introduces this like, ooh, here's a peek into this different lifestyle. What if it were a show that was, ooh, it's a peek into traditional conservative life?
That's it. That's the way. I'm not sure. Overton window is this concept, because this is what we see. We have Overton window time and time and time. Yeah, polyamory, and then you don't want to have kids, and then maybe a different. It's always taking you left and left and left downstream, and the end of it's the collapse of the culture.
Yes.
Okay. So I would argue that in order to win any political debate, the beginning should be, or It was very interesting. Charles Krauthammer, one of the famous um, conservative thinkers, said in one of his last arguments, the last publication, that Gramsci was right. Gramsci was a very important communist, basically, philosopher. It was very interesting to hear Krauthammer say that Gramsci was right. What did he mean? And he said that the conservative movement in America for many decades put most of its effort in economics, having free market. But Gramsci was right because he understood that the real battle is not only on the economics, but more on the cultural level. And while conservatives were promoting free speech, progressive were promoting woke ideas inside cultures, and we have to put our effort and focus on changing the culture as well, or protecting the
on
culture.
showing a better way to live. Yeah. Have you followed any of the Angel Studios film releases? We've been watching some of those. I have a panel, we do it every couple of weeks called That Christian Panel. So they've put out a number of films like The Sound of Hope. They just did a Bonhoeffer. And they are trying, I think, to move into this sphere that you're talking about, where they're showing different traditional, like Christian values or Judeo-Christian values. Have you followed any of their releases?
Well, unfortunately, the last year I was quite busy here, and I didn't have enough time to watch anything. But yeah, I told you before our talk that after October 7, I came back and I had to spend a couple of months in the army. So it's I didn't have time to watch TV enough.
When you say you had to spend a couple months in the army, what does that mean?
Uh, so October 7, I was in Israel, in America, where we lived near Princeton, and I saw the news. I took the first plane back home. I left my family in New Jersey, and I took the plane to Israel on October 8th, and I joined the IDF for a couple of months, and that's exactly, it's circle back to the beginning of our conversation, because I felt that I have to protect my people.
You were
Okay?
compelled to join, not by a force, but by yourself.
And that's not just me. That's all my generation. All my generation. If you at the beginning of on the first days, the army where you're supposed to get, like, in each unit 100% of people supposed to come in order that unit will be active, and you had all unit had 150%, 200%. People just came and say, take me, take me, take me. I want to help. Okay, so and we all came before the army even called us. We saw what happened. We saw our brother and sister in a stress, and we wanted to help. So, and I couldn't stay for a moment in America when and being involved in intellectual life when catastrophic is happening, and you just want to do good. You want to help. You want to be involved, and I think this is what we saw all over Israel. Like, people decided, nobody forced us to volunteer. We all wanted to volunteer. We all wanted to be part of protecting our people. It was, in a way, a privilege to join the army, a privilege to do what needs to be done.
Mm.
If somebody, in my friends, my brother, my cousins, if someone would say, I don't care, it would be very, very strange.
You that compulsion, that personal compulsion to do something, it reminds me of, do you know this Bible verse in 2 Samuel, be of good courage and let us play the men for our people?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of honor that you're making me think of. So, and
But again, it's I think that's because of of the Israeli culture. Okay, the Jewish tradition that we live here, we put huge focus on those cultures of those values. Honor is a part of it. Okay,
Mm.
family is part of it, an important part of it. Okay, um, and if someone is in trouble, you just want to help. It's and I think this is part of the holiness that I spoke at the beginning, that Moses is trying to show us the light. And unfortunately, when times pass, people are forgetting the trouble and going to their own issues. It's okay, it's understandable. But in time of crisis, we have to help each other. I think this is the most important thing that we can. If you would ask me what does God want from us, I think that the answer is quite simple: just to be good.
Mm.
That's the call. That's the message of the Bible. Be good.
Mm.
And at the end, we know what this means to be good. If you're doing something for yourself and not for others, if you think only about yourself and you don't see yourself part of a context, that's not good. We are being called to be good. That's it.
Mhm. What is what's the sentiment like there in Israel? And what are your, I don't know, what do you see coming in the future? Are you worried about where things are headed in terms of hateful, radical, what we've talked about as radical ideologies? Where do you see things going? Are you a hopeful person? Are you a what's called on the internet a white pilled person? Or are you a black pilled person about the future?
Well, I prefer not to look on the empty side of the glass and not on the full side of the full side of the glass. I prefer to look on all the glass. Okay, which means there are reasons to be optimistic and there are reasons to be pessimistic, and we have to. Um, Let me be very honest. On October 7, I was very pessimistic, um, and I was very worried that we might collapse. And I think we were on the verge. And I think what happened in the last decades, since Oslo process started in '93, that Israel started to walk in a very, very, very dangerous path, which became I would say, the progressive perspective of trying to make peace without understanding the consequence of our actions. And we got to a point which it became very, very, very dangerous. And after October 7, things started to change for the good. We left, most of my generation left completely the false conceptions of Oslo and the disengagement and the and the basically the progressive ideas of how to get peace. And the thing that in my personal level changed everything was the beginning of our activities against Hezbollah and the winning that we did in all those fronts. And the most important thing, that Trump won the election.
Mm.
If, God forbid, Kamala Harris would win the election, I think we would be the world would be in a catastrophe, and the Middle East in particular would be in a catastrophe. I don't think that America, the Democrat in America, understood the danger of their policies. Um, Let me just illustrate what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
So imagine Kamala is winning the election and saying that there is an embargo of weapon on Israel, um, and we are in a situation when we feel that Iran is attacking us and putting our collective life in danger, and they are running towards a nuclear bomb. What are our options? We have limited options. Okay, um, and this would be escalate very quickly to a nuclear war, because we don't have options, because America is refusing to give us the weapon to have non nuclear war. So I think it's became we were in a critical position here, critical moment here, and the fact that the world is wasn't being led. The world is basically, I think, for at least 2 years, or let's say in the last 2 years, President Biden is too old to run the country, and nobody cares what he's saying. So he can say don't, and the Iranian is doing whatever they want. He can say don't to Putin, and Putin is invading to Ukraine. And when you don't have a boss in the White House, the world is collapsing. So um, I feel that we are in a, after 4 years of Democrats, which made put the world in a very, very, very dangerous place. If we had another 4 years, it would be a catastrophe. And I can tell you that we're in my synagogue, people were praying for the success of Trump day and night, because it was, we felt that our own destiny, our ability to actually shape our destiny is based on whether Trump is going to win the White House or not.
Wow. I think it's also a sign of I was praying too for a reprieve, that God would grant us a reprieve with Trump winning. And I think it was his win also signifies for a lot of people a change, a possible change in the culture. Like we talked about changing culture to change politics.
Yeah.
And so it's more than just about which parties. And for me, I'm not even a member of any party. It's not really about the party that's in there or the person. For me, it's about where is culture going. And I think it's a good sign also that he won.
Yeah.
What do you make of people who, my husband and I were just in Europe this year for 2 weeks right before the election, and there were some people in Germany and Switzerland who were very afraid about the prospect of Trump winning, who talked to us, and it was they had almost the exact same um, worry and concern, but from this other, in my opinion, backwards or upside down perspective. They were very much like, if Trump wins, it's the end of the world. Um, climate change. And there was one man in Switzerland who was begging my husband, begging for the sake of his family, please don't vote for Trump. And thinking that Trump winning would somehow spell doom for Switzerland and for his family. And what do you make of people who can have this equally, apocalyptic almost view of what might happen if Trump were to win? And he did win, but
I think that um, sometimes people live inside the bubble and they hear their own. Think about it. If it would be before the internet and everything we could watch was CNN,
mm-hmm.
people would grasp reality in a certain way. And thank God we have ability to right now have a discussion in a multi-platform, and we have ability to understand reality in different ways. And I find it mainly in Israel. We have this phenomenon in Israel as well, but they are mainly people who are in the ages of Gen. What is before X? I can't remember. Baby boomers. Okay, that's the baby boomers. 60s, more or less. People who are still watching the old. They don't have any streaming platform, so they're watching still the old news, and this is the old elite. And so I understand where they're coming from, because this is the way they grasp reality. Um, and sometimes I feel for them, because I think that they have the wrong perspective of reality. And I think that in Europe, basically, Europe is in a very, very poor situation, because it's what happened in the last decades put them in a situation that basically Trump is telling them you have to take responsibility on yourself. America first. If you want to protect your border, you have to pay for that. Okay, and it's much easier to live in what we call in Hebrew a la la land, live with fairy tales, when America has to do all the bad wars, fight in Afghanistan, fight in Iraq, fight the terrorists, and we can criticize it without having an army where America is protecting us.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what happened in Europe. They dismantle all their armies and outsource their defense to America. So they have the privilege to criticize America because the war are not exactly the way they're supposed to be. But they are not putting their hands into their pockets and not going to the armies in order to defend themselves. And I think what's frightening for them with Trump concept of America first is basically, you want to protect yourself? Awesome. Take responsibility. We are not willing to risk our lives and our budget in order to protect you. And I hope that Europe will grow up from the ideas that America is the cup of the world, and they don't have responsibility. I think they have responsibility. If they want to survive, they have to make sure that they survive, and they have to get mature. I think that's the issue. And maybe from a different perspective, what's the major difference between conservatives and progressive is the way that they look at time. Okay, progressives prefer to pay. They prefer conceptually. They prefer the short term. So they would say, okay, I'm willing to give you whatever you want. Just let's make sure I don't have issues in my time of government. Or I would prefer to print money, just in order to have. Let's move the problem for the future, and conservatives would say, no, I prefer the long term, and I'm willing to pay the price for the short term. So if you look at what happened in the world, basically, Sullivan was trying to create a strategy which was preferring the short term, and immediately the outcome was a catastrophe. And in economics, again and again, you see that they are printing money, and unfortunately, I think it was done also in Trump administration. But if you look, for example, what Milei is doing in Argentina, it's fascinating. He told his people, listen, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, we're going to suffer. I'm willing to pay the price for the short term in order to get something on the long term. And I think this is the way that we need to understand. Sometimes we have to pay prices for the short term in order to have a longer and better a future. And this concept comes basically again from the Bible. It's the concept of sacrifice. What does it mean to sacrifice? You have to do something in order to get something. If I want to have a degree, I have to sacrifice 3 years or 4 years studying hard. If I want to have a nice home, I have to work hard to earn money. I have to sacrifice time, money, energy, whatever, in order to get something. And when we are not thinking about it in like adult, then there is, at the end of the day, there are consequences. And right now, I think the consequence in Europe are the collapse of Ukraine and potentially a third world war. And because Trump entered the White House, or will enter soon the White House, suddenly Putin understand, okay, I can't do whatever I want. There is someone on the other side that will say no, and I'm willing to pay the price. I'm willing to pay the short-term price in order to make sure that we're going to have long-term peace.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting to hear you talk about this, because it makes me think of it's funny because Europe in particular has all of these beautiful cathedrals with a history that stretches back much further than American history, and these cathedrals that took hundreds of years to build. And when I look at those buildings and I looked at the history, and I thought about the culture that built those, and how people would spend a whole generation working on this building and sacrificing to build just the ground level of this cathedral that they'll never get to see in their lifetime. and then their children will work on it and they won't see the finished product in their lifetime, and on and on. And it seems that we've gotten away from this long-term view culturally in a lot of places in the West, where we've become the parent who gives the child the candy bar in the moment without thinking about long-term consequences of giving that candy bar over and over in the moment.
One of my favorite stories from the Gemara, from all the Jewish text, is about a smart person who is planting a tree. It's a tree called Charuv, which means Charuv is fruits after 70 years. It's not 70 years, but this is how it's supposed. That's how the story goes. So somebody is asking him, why do you put it for 70 years? You are already 50 years old. You won't see it. And he say, like my grandfather put this tree for me so I can eat, I'm putting this for my grandkid, that he will be able to eat. And yeah, I completely agree with you. And if we're talking about culture, I want to mention another important thing. Next week when this episode will be on air, it will be Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite things that I saw in America was to see people celebrate Christmas and New Year. And I was asking Princeton, what should we do for Hanukkah? Because it's normally in the same period of time. And I told them, I don't like it when it's Christmas Hanukkah, or whatever, how you call it, mixing it. No. Mm-hmm. You should celebrate your tradition. And your tradition is Christian tradition. And you should celebrate it and be yourself. You don't need to make me feel comfortable and make a party for those two things. No, this is a Christian country. I love it as a Christian country. Please celebrate your own tradition. I will happily celebrate my tradition in Israel and in my home, in New Jersey, and in Israel we have here the Hanukkah, and it's okay. But we don't. It's so important for you as well, for the American as well, to celebrate their own tradition. It's not racist. It's not anti-Semitic to say, no, we're celebrating Christmas and happy Christmas, not happy Christmas, whatever, the less PC thing. No,
yes.
It should be you should love and respect your tradition. Don't change it.
Yes.
That's important for me as a Israeli Jew to say it. I said it in university, and I'm happy to say it right now in your show. You should all have happy Christmas, and we should have happy Hanukkah. But it's okay to be. The beauty of life is that we are not the same. We are not the same, and that's okay. We don't have to be the same. We the beauty is because I'm myself and you are yourself, and by the way, this is how I think this is the real concept of peace. Peace is done not because we are eliminate the differences between us. The real peace is when you are and I am myself, and even though we are not the same, we can agree and think together.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you very much for those Christmas wishes. As you said, when this interview airs, I think it's going to be Christmas week. So Merry Christmas to everyone watching, and Happy Hanukkah. We don't need what I was trying to think of because I haven't heard Christmas Hanukkah, but I've heard Festivus.
Yeah. I hear it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ronen Shoval. I know your time is limited, and so I appreciate you being gracious with it today. Can you just tell people, if they are interested in your book, where they can find more information on you and your writing?
Yeah, so thank you. They can go to ronenshoval.com, which is my name, and there is a link to the book and some articles about the book, and the book can be found in Amazon and at Routledge Press, which is academic press. Sometimes I think the price in Routledge is better than in Amazon. So if you want to purchase the book, go to Routledge and not to Amazon, but check it out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a happy Christmas.